Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the fourth and final day of the ISF Asian Regional Qualifiers for MLBB Women's. Ahead of us, we are going to be finishing up two matches of a best of three in the group stage, where we will be having a little bit more of a feeling as to who will make it over to the playoffs for the two final matches that we have. So, Arashi, we will be having four matches ahead of us, all in a best of three. And to accompany you today, ladies and gentlemen, on this English broadcast is me, Eterna, alongside with Arashi. So, with him coming in, let's see how he's doing. Arashi.
I'm doing great, Eterna. I'm looking forward to these matches. I had a chance to cast one of the matches previously in the lady scene, and I must say I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought that, honestly, with how much less active the scene is in the lady series, it's gonna be a bit slower in terms of the switch over in the meta. But everyone was instantly on the case immediately, just looking for new strategies, looking for new compositions, and looking for new ways to make use of all the new items. So that being said, it's a whole different scene, a whole different meta technically, with a whole different set of players in the lady scene. So I'm looking forward to see what kind of creative differences we can see compared to the usual MLBB scene that we always see a lot more regularly.
That's one of the main differences, I feel like, not just coming into ISF, but coming into the female scene in MLBB as a whole, right? Because, like Arashi mentioned, me and Arashi, we've been casting for MPLIT for so long, and we've been so used to seeing all these regular picks come through. They're all very formatted, very prio pick, very meta based. But one of the things that I've learned coming into the MLBB scene, especially that I casted a previous MLBB women's tournament earlier on in this year, is the fact that a lot of these women's, they like to kind of vie out of what is usual, and they like to go in for their comfort picks. So with that being said, will we be expecting some crazy picks coming through and crazy meta? Because Arashi, I don't know if you're aware, but I think it was in the African qualifiers that we saw a double retribution meta coming through, a double retribution strategy. We had some two gold laners in the same lane. So these are some crazy things that we could be expecting. But there's something that I want to remind for the viewers here, Arashi, that of course here in the Southeast Asian region, there are two groups. We have Group A and Group B. Ahead of us, we're going to see the schedules here, as we are going to see Vietnam and Myanmar for match number 1. You can see it on your screen there. And followed in by match number 2, Vietnam versus Philippines. And this is going to close out the group stage with all these other matches that are happening off stream as well. So after that, we will have a little bit of an idea as to who will make it top 2 in each group to eventually make it to the playoffs. And whoever qualifies from the playoffs will go straight over to WEC or over to Riyadh.
That's like the end goal for all these teams right now, doing their best. But for today, Vietnam, so playing two games technically straight up on stream, definitely a bit of a burden. But at the same time, a bit of a advantage when it comes to warming up, of getting in the groove early on, especially for the later on match. But like you mentioned, Eterna, the crazy things I really hope we see today as well. Because how cool would it be to see a meta start off at the women's scene and then make its way around to the rest of the competitive scene for Mobile Legends? Who's to say that, like you said, the double retribution strategy won't be able to work? Because unfortunately for me, I've only came across it during my rank game, so that's just not the way I wanted to go. But if they can find a way to make it work, we're all ears for it. But here's the next match up next. As we were saying earlier, Vietnam against Myanmar here, two regions that has shown quite impressive performances. And at least when it comes down to it, we can tell that they understand the basics, they know the fundamentals. And once you're at that level, it's all about the fine tuning, right? The adjustments you can try and bring out to really show that next level, that extra gap in skill against your opponents. And I think today, for sure, we're going to see something of that nature, because both teams, like you said, Eterna, it's just so intense right now. We're getting so close to that final stage of the competition. I don't think there's any space left to try and maybe hold out on some strategies.
For sure. So now we're going to take a look at the official team lineup here for Vietnam. We have Sa, Daisy, Kao Kyutka, Dinner, as well as Shiromi. And I think another thing that's really important to note about both of these regions or both of these teams is the fact that they're both tied in at 3 points on the standings. And if you guys want a little bit of a sneak peek as to the standings, you guys can head over to the official website, IESF.gg. I'm pretty sure Nightbot has been spamming that exact website, so you guys can get a taste of what's really going on, because again, right, there are a lot of matches that are being done that are not being streamed. So this is something that both of these teams would like to go out of. I mean, currently in that particular group, we have Philippines and Malaysia tied in at 6 points. So they really need this win for both of these teams if they do want to make it to the playoffs. For Myanmar, we have Luna Lynx, Chikoshi, Ku, Lang, and K. And I do believe that this is the same roster, Arashi, that we saw earlier on when Myanmar played. I think it was yesterday. So they're still going with this main five.
Well, at this point, the last thing you want to do is introduce more variables to your team's gameplay, right? I mean, we saw that some teams were able to pull it off, getting so close to the final stages and still pulling out substitutions. I believe Guam did that when they were winning against New Zealand. So it's definitely an option, but I think from the track record, from what we've seen, even in our own region, Eterna, last minute changes, that's just so dangerous, so risky. And even if you say that they're so dominant, there is a chance. The fact that you switch out and maybe if it goes well, then fine. But if you switch out your players and then it doesn't go well and have to switch back to the original, that just adds layers and layers of confusion. And I think teams are aiming for consistency, man. We've been talking about adaptability, and that adaptability in Mobile Legends can only come when you have consistency in the other aspects of the game that allows you to experiment with the other finer details. So I'm not surprised that it's the same roster for sure. But the question is now, heading this close here, is there anything else they've been saving up, right? Is there possibly like a secret weapon, an ace up their sleeves to try and surprise everyone, including us, for one final time?
And I think this is the moment that they should be bringing out those ace cards, right? With them being far behind the Philippines and Malaysia in terms of points, if they, again, still want to make it to the playoffs, if they still want to get a fighting chance to make it to Riyadh later on in the year, to the WEC, then this is the final time, the final chapter for both of these teams in order for them to secure a win. And I think according to the standings, they should require a clean sweep on both ends. I'm not really sure how it specifically will work, but if I'm not mistaken, if they go 2-0, they get 3 points, and that will bring them tied in with Philippines and Malaysia. However, Philippines has not dropped a single game, and I think that does kind of give a say as to how these standings occur. So if we're expecting any wild cards, if we're expecting any ace cards, hidden strategies, anything in their arsenal up their sleeve, then this is definitely the time to do so. And it's a big challenge, right, Arashi? I mean, considering a huge patch just dropped, we've been talking about it for the past few days, and it's mind-blowing, right? Because even top-tier teams like, let's say, Indonesia, right, in the male scene, with a full Onyx roster, they have actually also been seen struggling with it, losing 2-0 against Malaysia, noting how dominant they have been on the international level. So for these teams to kind of have to accentuate what they already have with the playstyle that they currently have and how they adjust to the new meta and adjust to the new patch, it definitely is a big challenge and will put both of these teams to the test.
Especially against a team that's so consistent, this is the time where you want to come up with something so confusing, so crazy. Because technically, when the teams are so good, they play with this clean, calculated style. That's where the slightest of curveballs can really throw out a lot of these calculations, right? That's a pattern you see with a lot of dominant rosters. Like even our Indonesian ladies roster that we saw a couple of days ago. When they play, they're just such a small margin of error because they're playing with extra bits of instinct, with extra layer of confidence, so that they actually take so many risks and they come out barely, right, with a sliver of HP, with a very delicate margin of error. So if you can throw some kind of curveball right here, the finer those margins are, the easier it is for things to go south for them. So that is definitely something that can be used to their advantage, because logically speaking, at least, if you're going up against a team that has shown to be calculative, to be clean and dominant, going with the standard stuff, right, almost sounds like a bad idea. So it's a lot easier said than done, obviously, to try and pull off something unexpected against a team that's so experienced and doing so well. But that is something that teams can definitely pull out. And like you said, Eterna, especially with the patch just coming through, this new patch, a lot of new heroes have potential. And teams just haven't had the liberty to really, or the time to really experiment and try and find something that does work even better. So this could be the chance, man. Better, better now than never, especially later on. If they're already on match point, why not, right? If you have nothing to lose, might as well give it a shot.
Yeah, and that's what makes ISF so brilliant with their timing, right? The fact that we can kind of actually grow with these teams, with these regions, with these individual players, and kind of watch them grow and watch them as they kind of journey through the patch and how they will be able to adjust. But going back to your point earlier, right? You were mentioning Indonesia, and I guess that's the experience that can be utilized in these kinds of tournaments, right? I mean, Indonesia has been dominant for the MLBB scene, for the female MLBB scene, rather, for quite some time, right? Their previous team, we now know them as Team Vitality. They used to be Bigatron era, but they have picked up, I would say 20 including the last tournament, 20 championships since 2021. So
Right.
that's the experience that they have, that they can bring through here at ISF. And I'm wondering, right, if we're talking about experience, we've seen that for Myanmar in particular, right, their MLBB male division has been doing so well. They've been doing so dominantly, and they were actually lead in their own particular groups and standings. So with that being said, I'm wondering whether or not that experience, that knowledge has also been transferred over to the ladies scene, whether or not they've had scrims together or not, because that really can define, like you mentioned earlier on, right, the fundamentals that these teams have actually learned.
I think there's definitely an impact there for sure, because all things considered, they still do play in the same server, right? Even if they aren't really scrimming intensively against each other, they're gonna run into each other in their rank games, in their games what they just play by default. So technically, usually the skill level of a team can be tied in directly to the strength of the region as well. So with that factor in your mind, I guess they really should be doing so. But like we were talking about earlier, since the beginning, it's just a different scene altogether, right? The male scene, the lady scene, you're seeing different kinds of styles, different kinds of metas. So
Yeah.
there's a chance that maybe the meta works well for the men's division, but not so much for the women's division. And that is another challenge that they have to try and figure out, right? Or maybe there's a chance that the male division isn't doing too good, but then the ladies division has found something extra. The fact that there are two different teams, I think it's fair to just consider both of them like different entities and not combine them immediately as like, whoa, teams from Myanmar. Because again, even for Indonesia, even for the Philippines, I think that it can be quite different. So I think it's better to just keep an open mind here, especially with a lot of the small experimentations we've seen from all these teams. Like for instance, we saw a Fredwin run a temporal rain coming in from I believe Albert. So there's gonna be small experimentations like that. And at a glance, for instance, with that example, it might sound confusing, like, well, what's the idea here? Why is that for? But then you kind of give it some time, you give it some experimentation, and then you'll notice, like for Fredwin, the temporal rain, that allows you to really proc that temporal rain with your taunt, not with the Appraiser's Wrath only. So that allows you to like build up some stacks. So there's some small opportunities like that that we might just miss at first glance if we kind of don't see it with an open mind.
Yeah, a lot of experimentation coming through, especially with the new emblems and the new talents coming through. But you mentioned about the temporal rain, but Arashi, there's something that I really wanted to ask you. So yesterday, we saw a lot of Rogers, right? Roger, as you guys know as well, is a very top priority pick because it's great in the jungle. It can be flexed into the gold that a lot of these teams and a lot of these regions can actually utilize to their benefit when they want to go for a chess match in the drafting picks and the drafting phase. But my question is here, we've seen two different choices of emblems for the Roger. we've seen Skypiercer, no, not Skypiercer, Warcry Roger,
Mhm.
as well as the Impure Rage Roger. What do you think about both? And which one do you think is a better choice for Rogers? Whether it be in the jungle or in the gold lane. Or maybe it's different.
I think it's a bit different, right? The nature of the emblem in itself, it's a bit more all in for the war cry. So I feel like if you're attempting to go for a lot of skirmishes in the early game, a lot of all ins, right? A lot of like just straight up dives instead of tentative movements back and forth. Because different teams have different styles, right? Some teams prefer that tango, the back and forth. Some teams just prefer to go in directly. No waiting at all. If it'll go in directly, I feel like that Warcry can add a lot of damage, a lot of potential, because it's not only for you, right? It's also for the rest of your teammates. Whereas for the Impure Rage, if you're just moving in back and forth, if you don't get the chance to really proc the Warcry by using the 3 basic attacks or the 3 skills, then in that sense, it's going to be a lot more beneficial in the long run. And it also gives you a great deal of benefit outside of combat stats as well, with the regen coming in from built into that emblem. So I feel like it depends on how you want to play it.
Interesting. Because I was wondering, right? I was like, okay, because I think the first few Rogers that we've seen, they went in full with Warcry. And I was like, okay, so maybe this is the new meta. I think we've seen Roger with Quantum Charge, Impure Rages, but Warcry. And I think that was like the moment where I was like, okay, maybe now Rogers, they opt for Warcry more because of the new emblem that came out. But again, I saw a different adjustment after that. Sometimes they went in for Impure Rage again. So I was like, okay, so maybe there's still a layer of flexibility and creativity in the way that you mentioned earlier, right? With the way that you explained it. So very interesting. Now, do you think with Roger doing so well, that it will also be a priority in the MLBB women's scene? Or do you think we're going to see something different? Like maybe they still go for the utility jungler setup, like the Fredrins. We've seen the Baxias doing well. Barats has kind of fallen off in terms of like popularity. But what's your feeling?
I feel like the Roger can for sure show up, but we've seen a lot more bias towards the straight up assassin picks, I feel like. So I think there's going to be assassin showing up today for sure. I don't know how much, but I think considering how flexible and how good the Roger is, I think for sure it's gonna show up today as well. And what I'm not quite so sure about is whether it's going to be in the gold lane or the jungle, right? Because we've seen
Right.
a lot of different styles, and for a fact, some players just don't really vibe well in the gold lane with that aggressive style, with that all-in style, because it's a whole different mindset compared to the usual just distance management from from range, just hitting away at safety. It's a whole different mindset and perspective compared to a Roger that wants to go in immediately, take advantage of the extra built-in tankiness and the movement speed. So I think for some particular teams, it definitely is going to show up. But I think there's going to be a bit more of an appearance for the Roger in the jungle, just because of that difference in mindset. But along with that, I feel like if the Roger does show up, I think the fighter utility junglers will still be a bit more popular, because I think there's something nice about having that security in the jungle, having someone that's a bit more tankiness, a bit more difficult to punish in the early game, especially against a Roger that clears really fast. If they can secure a Roger, a strong mid lane with good clear, and a roamer that can set up with a lot of crowd control, that's a very dangerous combination, especially if you're on an assassin.
So with that being said, right, what do you think is the scope of this, right? Do you think with that we'll be seeing a little bit more of the Marduses? Because I mean, technically, we haven't seen Mardus in quite some time, right, Arashi? I think MPLID, like specifically, there was a moment where one of the biggest priorities in the jungle was the Mardus, right? It's very flexible. You can utilize it for kill pressure. You can also utilize it for more of an advantage in these team fights and these lord and neutral objective takes with the turtle as well. But then he was missing, right? It was mostly just Fredrin, Baxia, Barretts. But now the Martis has kind of come back. We've seen a lot of Martis here at ISF. Is this something that we can expect moving forward, or is this just specific to certain regions?
Man, I think the Martis right now, it has potential. It clears fast, it's strong in the early game. It has a built-in reset with the Decimate as well. there's definitely potential there, but I feel like right now it has to be in some kind of position where it's more of a comfort pick because all things considered, it's not very flexible, right? You have a very straightforward approach to fights, and you have a very straightforward approach even in the early game in how you want to play it around as well. You want to be part of a lot of early game fights. You want to take advantage of the level 4 power spike, and you want to run straight at your opponent's backline while you still have the mortal coil to be immune to that crowd control. So it's good, it's effective, it forces your opponent to play a certain way. But at this point, I feel like a lot of teams already know how to play against it. So if you do that, you're kind of putting yourself in a position to be punished, to be already countered technically before the game even begins. So unless they want to use it in a different way, or maybe in a different combination, right? Maybe you combine the Mardis along with a new roamer that's like now in the meta. I feel like it's gonna be not prio. It's possible to still be used, but as far as like prioritize in the first phase or banned away, I feel like it's a bit too costly for now.
Will we be seeing a Bane? Okay, I think.
Whoa! All these questions, Eterna.
I've been really hyped about this new patch, right? Because with them saying that things are going to be shifting towards fighters in the jungle a little bit more, as well as the assassins. We've seen the Nolans doing great. We've seen the Lings doing great. Not so much for the Lancelot and the Hayabusa, but that's still to be tested and still to be seen as to how both of these assassins actually do. But I was so curious whether or not we'll see a Bane. Because there have been some adjustments with the Bane. And Bane, if you adjust his kit, if you adjust his itemization, maybe even a Sky Piercer for this Bane, I think the damage is actually quite insane. And the clear speed is also really great. I'm hoping we get to see Bane back in the meta.
Well, I think I would agree with you. I want to see all these less conventional picks, Bane as well in the meta. I think the main strong point surely is that clear speed, right? We've seen a lot of heroes get priored so much purely on the basis of their clear speed. Like the Baksha is an example. The Fredrin, technically, part of the reason why it kind of fell off a bit compared to the Barats is also due to the lack of that clear speed, which leads a lot of junglers to go for that concussive blast to assist with that. So I think having good damage, good utility, and great clear speed is great. But I feel like it's just a bit less dynamic because if you look at the junglers right now, they're usually a bit more flexible in what they can do, right? So for the Fredrin, you can go a front line, you can sustain, you can have mobility as well. And even if you're on Assassin, you can split, you can participate in fights, you have mobility, or you can go for flanks, or even be just like a threat. So unless a team can really find ways to kind of include the Bane in their composition and in their overarching game plan, I feel like it will require a bit more time. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight into the drafting phase for game number 1. And the Angela falls into the hands of Vietnam, so already quite the interesting situation here.
And it's great, right? If we take a look at the bans here, we have Vietnam with the first pick on blue side and Myanmar on the red. But Roger, one of the heroes that we've been talking about for the past like 15 minutes, has actually been prioritized and taken off the board alongside with the Novaria and the Chip. On the other side, the Yuzong that has been doing great in the EXP lane, usually traded in with the Charizla, has also been banned out. The Minotaur and the Luo Yi. So one of the main priority heroes that are left is the Angela, and Myanmar actually let that slide for Vietnam to pick up for themselves. And now Vietnam also pick up a Charizla that has also been a huge priority in his own lane. There's also an option, honestly, for Myanmar now if they want to pick up something like the X-Borg to try and counter the Charizla in the lane. But more so, the Valentina and the Baxi has also been picked up by Myanmar. And Arashi, the Faramis has been doing so great so far, right? With Southeast Asia, I think there's like a red thread that we can kind of pick up from their playstyle. They're very aggressive. They love the early game ganks, they love to go in for team fights, and they love skirmishes. So the Faramis has been doing so great. And the fact that Myanmar has picked up something like the Valentina can actually, quote-unquote, deny that pick away from Vietnam.
Can be a denial, but considering how both the compositions are shaping up right here, there's a chance that Vietnam will be able to match them in the global presence and also in the team fight with the blazing duet with a penalty zone available to them right here. even if both teams do have access to that nether realm, it's just that Vietnam can still come out on top. But not for Myanmar. They picked up the Moskov, so equalizing in the global situation. But of course, the Spear of Destruction is a bit less reliable. So we'll have to see. From the looks of it, when it comes to the mobility and the early game clear and prio, Myanmar definitely has a bit of an edge right here. And with that, they're going to be trying to limit some of these early game power heroes from the side of Vietnam. The Moskov that we were talking about just earlier, Eterna, ban away as well. Seems like they're going to be looking to try and maybe go for some aggressive moves. They've banned away the Minotaur as well. So that kind of leads you to think about what are they looking for, right? In theory, if you're banning away the Minotaur, you want to go for something that can go in, that can go for crowd control, that can be countered by the defensive nature of that Minotaur. So I think that's what Vietnam needs to be very careful about here, right? Maybe look a bit more into it, but they ban away the Florin actually. So they just want to make sure that they have the sustained advantage from the Angela, from the Terizla right here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they're going for here. But of course, Myanmar, they do still have the Valentina, right? The Valentina can still utilize that hard guard if they want to. So it's one of the greatest strengths of the Valentina going against these top priority heroes that quote unquote heavily rely on their ultimates. And that's something that can be capitalized over by them. But it looks like that's a Leomord ban from Myanmar. Very interesting. I thought it would pop up, especially with the changes to his kit. His passive just increased, so more damage with the passive as well. I think Arashi can explain in a little bit more detail about that. And Myanmar know this. They understand that it can be a big, I would say, encounter, an obstacle towards their own strategy right now with the Baxia pickup without the Angela, right? So they deny that away, and they're forcing Vietnam into a position as to who they're going to be picking in the jungle, right? Because if we're talking about utility junglers, we're talking about fighter junglers, we're talking about tank junglers, I think the only two heroes that have been still successful would be Fredrin and the Baxia. And with all these heroes kind of taken off the board along with the Mardis takeaway, what does that leave them to go? Do they go for it just straight up an assassin instead?
I think an assassin actually would make more sense in the hands of Vietnam because they already have a strong frontliner, right, in the Terizla, and that's usually the main concern. They do have an Angela, so that also lends itself to a great combination with the assassins, because with assassins you want to have a strong frontliner as well. For Myanmar, it's a bit more ambiguous, I would say. It's not really locked in, but the fact that they ban away the Leomord leads me to believe also that they might want to pick something a bit more vulnerable in the jungle, because like you mentioned, Eterna, with a bit more damage for the Leomord built in, at least to better clear, better fighting prowess as well. These are all things that can be used, but like you were calling out just earlier, the X-Work left open, picked up to counter the Terizla, and that's a great solution for an array of issues, right? Even if you want to go for a bit of a slow play, front to back, you can kind of harass with the flames. You can go all in as well and deny the backliners from having any impact with the last insanity. So for now, Myanmar has the better what do we call it? The more direct collision-oriented composition. Yeah. But for Vietnam, that's where the Angela comes in, right? They'll have to contend with the Moskov matching the Angela and push later on. But now,
okay.
What?
Okay, here's the thing, right?
Okay.
The mid laners, and Paquito as well. Paquito jungle? Is that what we're seeing here? We haven't seen this in so long, Arashi, Paquito in the jungle. I think the last time we saw it was back when Albert was still in RRQ as their jungler, right? Paquito in the jungler, that reminds me of Albert, but also with the Kagura and the Kufra. Okay, here's the thing, after the last patch, one of the heroes that were really highlighted was also the Kagura, right? Aurora received an adjustment, but so did the Kagura. And so a lot of these creators, a lot of these casters around the world have been wondering whether or not this Kagura actually fits in the meta or not with the changes to her kit. I will, find a little bit more information as to the specifics of her change, but a lot of people have been saying that perhaps Kagura can be reaching back into the meta on a professional scale, so not just in ranked games, but we're going to be seeing her on the professional level as well. What do you think about this Kagura?
I think it's great that we're seeing the Kagura. It's a bit of nostalgia as well. It was so dominant back then when it was still meta. With the changes, I feel like there's damage potential for sure. And with some of the items also changed, there's a chance that the Kagura also benefits indirectly through that too. And if you look at the composition here for Vietnam, I thought it was going to be a bit more team fight oriented, but now it really looks like it's a bit more just pick off heavy, right? A lot of burst damage on the Paquito from the Kagura as well. Now the Terizla might just perform as more of a deterrent for a counter engage tool. But for Myanmar, they went for the Kufra that can really punish some of these squishier members like the Paquito even if they are straying forward in the front line. But considering there's a Terizla, I feel like it's safe to assume that Vietnam won't allow that to happen that easily.
So we'll see, ladies and gentlemen, as we get into game number 1 in this best of 3 series between two regions, Vietnam and Myanmar, as they hope to bring themselves up in terms of points in the standings from the group stage to make it to the playoffs. And Arashi, just as a recap, right, the change to Kagura is for her skill number 1, her umbrella throw, they've increased the base damage. And as well as for her skill 2, they reduce the mana cost. So the spammability and the damage has been increased. And that will help her in the early stage of the game to go in for the clear.
Well, you're certainly seeing Vietnam try and make use of it, trying to contest the clear speed. Usually the Valentina is one of the faster clearers in the mid lane, but you can see that with the Angela, with the Kagura that can both spam out those spells, it's a lot more matchable. And you can see the gang coming into the top side, but Ku is there to try and block it off, deny it. And so far, it's a slower paced early game, but look at K already going for the invades, but she'll be spotted out by Kao Kuteka and back away.
So it's a bit of a mouthful, Arashi. Good luck as they start to get in real, deep and dirty in these particular team fights. But this is what we're seeing for the first few moments, right? And looking back at the emblem choices and of course the talents that both of these teams have opted for, Paquito Lethal Ignition as a jungler. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it makes sense with the idea of how they want to go because you don't see Paquitos going for a tanky build. It's usually just full damage, be a bit more of a deterrent, maybe a hybrid build with one or two tankiness items. But for the most part, they're gonna perform as a gank tool, and with some damage, it also helps with the securing of the neutral objectives to go for the double jab into the retribution. So I think that is a setup that makes sense, and I think that can lead to some miscalculations from the side of Myanmar if the main front line gets bursted down. That lethal ignition can be what makes or breaks the whole combo. But I'm also interested to the fact that the Kagura we're seeing bring the flame shot as well, man. Kind of,
Yeah.
it's a bit nostalgic. There was at one point there was a time in MPL ID at least where it was a 5 flame shot meta. I just got
Yeah.
flashbacks immediately to those days, the good old days.
Like level 1, flame shot, 5 man onto 1 hero, insta kill, first blood.
Right.
No, please. Let's not bring that back. But it again shows the level of aggression that is coming from the Kagura, right? She went in with Flame Shot as well as Lethal Ignition. So they're going for kind of a similar strat here. You can see a similar, red thread for Vietnam. The fact that they want to perhaps look for more early game fights with these kinds of choices in their emblems, right? Lethal Ignition, Kagura. Mostly we would see who else in the mid lane uses Lethal Ignition. Varsa? Does Varsa go Lethal Ignition?
I think she still does for sure. It's those heroes with a good chunk of burst damage generally
Yeah.
can really go and benefit from those little ignitions. But for the most part, I think we've really been seeing, considering the slower pace of the game before the patch, where there's just a lot of lord dances, a lot of waiting around, waiting for the right moment. That's why we're seeing a lot more impure rages and quantum charges that allow some of these mages to really have a bit more kite ability, to have
Yeah.
more sustainability when they're just trading blows from so far away. But that's why it's fun right now with the change to the Lord, where it's now no longer as safe to do so. With the changes to some of the emblems like the war cry that allows you to just go in all in. I feel like a lot of majors are now considering again, like, do we just go for even more damage? Do we go
Yeah.
for more utility even to really just help out in some of these chases, some of these ways to really go all in and ensure that you can force your opponents into those fights when you want it? Because we've seen again and again in the past couple of days, when a team tries to go for an engage and it doesn't work out, it is just so costly right now, man.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, right? Do you want to go for something a little bit more risky or not? Because technically going for damage in the long run, it is a little bit more risky, especially if you're going against a team with big aggression with dive and so on and so forth. So that's something that you have to make as a judgment call in the few seconds that you have as you are given the particular pick that is given to you. But ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a technical pause. We want to make sure that, of course, our players and our teams get the best playing experience as possible. And of course, you guys back at home, you guys can get the best viewing as possible, right? We want to make sure fair play is our utmost priority. And we want to make sure that with such a high stakes match as is this one, right? In this best of 3 with Vietnam going against Myanmar, the fact that them losing even a single game will define how they will look on the standings to make it to playoffs, to eventually make it to WEC in Riyadh. It just goes to show how important this match is, and we want the best for everyone involved.
I mean, even if you're a normal player, right? Pink spikes are already troublesome, let alone these pro players with so much at stake, man. You want to give them
Yeah.
the best environment possible because they're already experiencing a lot right here, right? The pressure, the expectations from the fans, and considering it's on a national level as well, there's a lot they're already dealing with, and ping is the last thing we want them to really have in the back of their minds, right? Especially with a lot of these aggressive heroes, that small spike in ping can make or break a good engagement. It can make sure that the penalty zone lands or misses. So we want to just give them a bit of time and make sure that everything runs smoothly. And we have a bit more chance to talk about here. What's the idea, right? Because it's an Angela against a Kufra. In theory, the Kufra should be a bit more aggressive, but considering the rest of the roster, right? Considering there is a Kagura that still, even though with the spam mobility available now, she still does a huge chunk of burst damage as well. So I think for Myanmar, they can go for an engage, but if they want to do so, they have to be careful and make sure they engage onto the right person. A lot of teams we've seen focus a lot more on the EXP lane when the first neutral objective shows. That's how they can get an advantage. They can get a wave clear advantage, get the ultimate ready first, and then force their opponents to back away because of the lower HP bar. But now if they want to go and expend a lot of that time and resource onto a Terizla, right? That's not exactly ideal considering the fact that for the side of Vietnam, there's still ways for them to really come back from a health disadvantage with the Angela.
Definitely, definitely. And if we're talking about wave clear, it looks like the Kogura, I mean, for the first few minutes of the game at that, right? I think it was 143 in, right? We saw that the Kogura was actually able to clear quite well against the Valentina and the Kufra in the mid lane. So maybe that's one of the big changes towards her kit, with the fact that her base damage has increased, the fact that she can clear a lot quicker. And I'm wondering whether this Kogura will be itemizing the Wishing Lantern, right? It's one of the newer mage items that have popped in. I mean, it's a great era to be a mid laner, by the way. It's a great era to be a mage right now because there's just so much flexibility and so much creativity that we can go for when it comes down to our itemization. And we're not even talking about emblems yet, right? So Wishing Lantern. It requires, if I'm not mistaken, an 800 burst damage to proc. That's definitely something that Kagura can go for, right? Her burst is quite heavy, especially when she combos it with the Yin Yang Overturn. Do you think that the Wishing Lantern could pop up? Because I'm excited to finally see this item in real life, right? I mean, we've been seeing it in our ranked games, but, you know, I want to see it on the pro players. I want to see it on a competitive level.
I think the Kagura can definitely proc it, but the question is how often can the Kagura proc it, right? In theory, at least, it seems like this item is more suitable for those mages with a lot of spammable big burst damages. The Farsa kind of comes to mind, right, with the Feather Airstrike. The Novaria was a big one we are talking about. So I feel like it's a possibility, but it also depends on how they want to play this out. Because if they want to go for the Wishing Lantern, Yes, it's a big chunk of damage. It's an extra 10% HP damage, I believe, if you do get the proc with that 800 damage. But there's a chance that with the Kogura, again, having these more spammable options with the Umbrella Eterna, they
Mhm.
might just want to she might just want to go for just more penetration or like a holy crystal, so that it's not just the ultimate, it's also the rest of these spells spammed out that maybe won't reach 800 damage but can still do a massive amount, especially to the squishier members that in theory the Kogura should be aiming for. But who knows, maybe this is going to be a frontline glowing one shred Kogura, right? There's a lot of options available right here, because it's not just the damage per second right now with the glowing one, it's also the healing reduction.
Hear me out, Arashi. Sky Piercer Kogura.
Oh, I like the sound of that, right? I think
Re-execute, right?
there's a lot of potential for sure. And I'm glad we can get to have this conversation, Eterna, about how mages have potential and how we can theory craft these items. Because usually we're with Mirko, and he's not a mid lane guy. He doesn't
No.
like mid lane at all. But we're both mid laners right here, so we can
Yeah.
talk up the mid lane as much as we want without any interference. Shout out Mirko.
For sure. With Mirko, it's always the gold lane, it's always the jungle because, that's his role. But, you can actually go for something similar with Naisu, right? Because he is a number one Gourd player. He had so much fun when the Gourd suddenly came back into the meta. We don't see the Gourd quite often anymore, so oohoo for Naisu. But again,
Okay.
right, Sky Piercer Kogura. I think yesterday, Indonesia, the male team, they picked up 3 Sky Piercers
Oh, I saw that.
in the
Yeah.
entire team, right? Who was it? It was Farsa Sky Piercer, Ling or Nolan Sky Piercer,
Right.
and then we had another one pick up the Sky Piercer. Am I remembering this correctly?
Was it in the gold lane? Was it a Roger in the gold lane?
Brody Sky Piercer,
A Brody. That's what
right?
it was. Yes. Yes.
CW.
I think so. So yeah, as Mirko would say, the SPA, the Sky Piercer abuser, is definitely in full swing for Indonesia men's at least. We'll have to see if that influence makes its way onto the ladies scene as well. Especially with this composition, we talked about the potential for pickoffs, especially for Vietnam, right? With the Paquito, with the Kagura. I think the Sky Piercer really lends itself more over there. Whereas for the side of Myanmar, I think it's still a bit more balanced, right? They still have a chance to try and go for it, but I feel like they're banking more so on these like long duration team fights, and they're gonna be trying to really move in and out of danger. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
For sure, for sure. So that's what SPA stands for.
Oh, you weren't
'Cause-
aware?
I wasn't, because Naisu kept saying, oh, I keep saying SPA when I should be saying SP for like Sky Piercer. And I was like, okay, what's the A? I was like wondering in my head. I didn't get to ask him yesterday. I completely forgot, but I see.
Mirko's
SPA, Sky Piercer Abuser. I
Yep.
mean, that 9,099 damage is kind of awful, bro. It's a little OP.
It's really fun to see though, right? When you do get the proc, 9999 is like, whoa, big
It's so
damage.
satisfying.
Very dissatisfying. I was wondering though, right? I actually just a personal curiosity.
Mm.
If you do proc it and you get like the 9,999, how does it factor into the damage calculation, right? Because in theory, if you did 9,999 damage, that kind of throws off the damage calculations. But ladies and gentlemen, we are back to the Land of Dawn.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the technical pause has ensued and we are going back into the game, into the Land of Dawn, and we're back to okay. I thought we were actually in minute number 13, but it was a visual bug. 1 minute, ladies and gentlemen. That's the amount of time that has elapsed so far. And you were talking about the Sky Piercer, so maybe we'll get to see some of these heroes pick it up and see how it will affect in the data and in the statistics. But right now, we do see that both teams going to be centering around the next neutral objective. Kai is level 4 right now. Doesn't have her ultimate though, as well as the Paquito.
Oh, there you go. That's a retribution steal from Ka, but now she might pay the price for it. The fight breaks out, but the penalty zone of the 3 members shatters the formation from Myanmar. And look at the kiting coming in from Vietnam. Moving back, but now chasing down with the hard guard available. That's 1, that's 2, but the dash gets blocked. It won't even matter though. Ka securing 1 kill along with Shieru. And that is Vietnam with an all-out win out of nowhere, man. An explosion of action.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected this, right? A 2-0 trade, make it a 3-0 trade with a beautiful steal from the Paquito, from Calcutta. And it looks like she's going to be able to grab a little bit more. That's a orange buff steal away from Kai, and she's being completely shut down here in the 3rd minute of the game.
That is unfortunate, man. Being a Baksha that in theory should be clearing faster, rotating around faster, that whole sequence of events just allows Calcutta to just come in, you know, just drive-by steal away that orange buff. And that's what we're talking about. The burst potential from the Paquito is good for getting kills, but it's also great for going for those steals. And look at Ku, still level 3 at this point, not really having an opportunity, finally reaching level 4. Myanmar are definitely on the back foot though. They gotta just wait around unless they want to go for a big play here. Sa on the Kagura has escape mechanisms. Seems like everything will be fine and dandy for Vietnam.
Yeah, right now, it looks like Sa is actually in a 2v1 situation, but she's still so confident to go in for the clear despite, you know, Luna Lynx utilizing this Valentina with the IMU and the penalty zone. But look at this!
Ooh, that's gonna be an insane jump in, but the hard guard won't be enough. It wasn't even channeled properly for Shieru, where Calcutta gets taken out. Great rotation from Myanmar, and they're going even further to the mid lane, immediately rotating straight for the turtle. But Vietnam will be available to try and contest that.
Both these teams are putting up a fight, right? Because initially in the first 2 minutes of the game, it felt like Vietnam held a bit more control, but Myanmar definitely fighting back. Paquito is back into the Land of Dawn, but I don't think he's actually going to go for the contest. They might look for the mirror play instead in the bottom lane, and this is going to be a free turtle here over for Myanmar to take. And we were talking about Skypiercer. Looks like the Paquito has picked up Skypiercer.
Was it the Paquito or the Kagura? I thought it was the Kagura. First item though, which is why I was quite shocked. But on the bottom side, we saw Vietnam group around to try and go for a gank. But now Myanmar, after getting that turtle, are the ones with a bit more control here. If you're looking at the level advantage for the jungle, K has now caught up to Calcutta. So now it's a bit more of an equal situation here, and it's back to that slow, calculative gameplay.
Technically, right? Technically, in this mid lane, the Kufra and the Valentina, they're a heavy duo, right? A lot of CC, a lot of base damage as well. The Kufra also has really great clear, but for some reason, the Kagura is still winning it out, but...
Okay, comes in, jumping onto Shieru, but it's only one person going in. Ku was just waiting in the wings to try and help out on the engage. Vietnam fought back, but it won't be happening just yet. And look at the cutting being done by Daisy, though. They're setting up for some kind of roam.
Looks like it. Oh!
Oh, Hard Guard comes in to save Sa from the Spear of Destruction, but it's countered! That's gonna be Calcutta picking up a kill once more going in, but here comes the counter engage back from Myanmar. Luna Lynx coming in, doing some damage, but LBK picking up the kill first. The lane coming in with the X-Borg, is flaming everyone down. Daisy will be the next victim as the last Insanity comes in, diving under the turret, but Sa will be able to survive. Myanmar with a great response.
Ooh, 2-0 trade after that Spear of Misery that hit onto the Kagura, onto Sa. You would immediately assume, okay, that's a -1 Kagura. She's definitely gonna go down, but the Heart Guard came into clutch, and afterwards they were able to, you know, kind of go for a back and forth team fight really, really well. But for now, 6 minutes in, Myanmar still hold a little bit of that gold lead, as it looks like they're going to start down on the neutral objective. A little bit of a bait here from Dinner, from the Claude, to have a little bit of a taste as to where the whereabouts of the rest of the team. But look at the damage coming through. What?
Sao making a ugly attempt there, even with the flame shot, it doesn't connect though. And on the other side, whoa, that's gonna be a retribution steal by Calcutta again. Last Insanity doesn't really amount to anything. And now look at the back and forth as always for Vietnam. Myanmar won't oblige though. They lost the turtle, but they were able to get a tower on the top side. So that macro play from them, continuing now, raising a bit from Dinner to try and clear the wave, deter the members of Myanmar from going for the turret, and they will be able to do so.
what is this trade, right? I mean, Vietnam, they've been really great at these team fights, but Myanmar are so quick on their feet in terms of that macro play, right? The fact that they've been able to get a turret under the nose of Vietnam for free in the top lane does propel them a little bit forward. And Chikoshi on the Moskov already with the DHS. That should be the third item. We'll get a little bit more information later on, but it looks like the Kufra is charging. Do they really want to go for this? They can, but bottom lane,
on the other side, that's going to be Kling, just taking a lot of damage, a lot of pressure. But look at the rotations, man. Myanmar now, having the Kufra just always standing by in the mid lane, allows them to just have the prio. And Kaukurika is alone on the bottom side here, but I think a dive will be a bit too risky.
DHS now picked up for dinner. So it is getting to that power spike, hopefully for the club. But wait. That's a Immortal popped.
Flying, still surviving though, but now Kaukurika 1v2, but keep in mind the hard guard is available. Tyrant's Rage, Tyrant's Revenge. Potentially, that's gonna be a stun. Kaukurika with the last insanity as well. Shieru forced to flicker out. Esa looks for a chance to try and turn it back around. Flame shot though lands. Now very low, getting chunked down, going back for the outplay, but it won't be enough. But Daisy swings the hammer down. There'll be one picked up. Ku flickering out after the great engage as Shieru chases down, trying to get K, but under the turret. Is this dive a bit too risky? It won't amount to a kill, unfortunately. But Vietnam trading evenly, although they lost their jungler in the process.
Yeah, 2-for-2 trade, and they lost Lang as well, right? So I get it, right? But at the moment, there's not much neutral objective contests that are happening at the moment. So it does look they are gonna fall back down to the default. With this, both of these teams should be focusing on this Lord, the first Lord of the game here. Team X at the moment, Kao Kutka on the Paquito is already at level 11, and both these junglers actually on a very similar path, but it looks like the Claude has only 2 items, Corrosion Scythe and the DHS. But it looks like the hard guard has been popped up here in the mid lane.
This is for dinner. Another penalty zone lands on K. Only one person though, countered by Luna Nexus' own penalty zone. The last insanity burns down Sa. She'll be taken out immediately as Daisy is too low to help out the team. It's a 4v4, 5v4 actually, and Myanmar gets the advantage. For Vietnam, they sent Kaukurika to the bottom side. She won't be anywhere close to try and go for the contest here as Myanmar goes for the Lord immediately. Dinner waiting in the wings, but it will be a free Lord for Myanmar.
Ooh, beautiful collapse from Myanmar, and beautiful execution as well. And it looks like they're going to utilize that momentum to bring it to the mid side turret. They're going to take it for themselves. That Chikoshi on the Moskov has picked up the golden staff. So the Moskov should be ready for these team fights. I mean, earlier on, we did see a little bit of a trade back in now from Dinner to pick up that tower in the top side, but as a general whole, with how much damage the Moskov is already doing, with the fact that the Moskov has already reached his power spike, he should be able to burst through these turrets rather quickly.
It's just a great play from Myanmar to always have Chikoshi in the right place at the right time whenever the neutral objective is showing out. Now they're making a play on the bot side. They're trying to make sure that they pull away Vietnam to the bottom side. They go for the turret. They get penalty zone, but it won't even matter. Daisy pushed away, denied. Tyrant's Rage, though, coming in from Ku. Bit too ambitious as the team isn't really ready to follow up on it. They back away. They know they can play it slow. With the Lord pushing, they get a turret on the top side with Halaying assisting the Lord.
Ooh, and now it looks like they're gonna go in for the siege. That Lord is in the top side and it is pushing. Myanmar understand they want to close this out as soon as possible if they want to make it to Riyadh, but it looks like some damage has been put through. Look at that!
They didn't overturn. He gets traded back, Sa, but Chikoshi is no longer in the picture. Now Vietnam has a gold lane advantage, DPS advantage. They can go for a fight if they want to, but Myanmar, they go straight for the purple. They lost the gold lane, but they still feel like they have enough damage. They're going to make a final play for the turret, and they will be able to do so. But that is the damage potential from the Kogura we were talking about. Sky Piercer onto the Holy Crystal immediately allows you to do just that.
So that's where the damage is coming from, right? We were talking about perhaps we'll be seeing the Wishing Lantern, but of course, we don't get to see that right now. Like you mentioned, right? Holy Crystal and the Sky Piercer. So that's where the base damage is coming from. She should be going for, what do you think is next? Glowing Wand? Did she go for the Blood Wings instead? It's very interesting to say. Wait a second, look at that.
Luna overturn dodged away. Luna laying so low, but still alive. The flame shot secures it though. And look at Ku in the backline, zoning everyone away. But everyone coming in. The hard guard just allowing Dinner to stay in the front, but it might be too much than she can handle. That's gonna be the last Insanity zoning her away as Vietnam back up, but they find Sakoshi in the midst of the chaos. Kakureka now seeing an opportunity, going for her lane, and that is gonna be the Angela slows, allowing Vietnam to go. But look at Sa, just all the way in the back, going for another play, going to try and secure for her lane.
What?
The Sky Piercer, securing one, securing two. Her lane now with the Immortal, back at it for one final time. With the last Insanity, it still won't be enough. She will eventually fall. Double kill for Sa. Vietnam striking back right as the Lord spawns.
What is that, Arashi? What did we just witness? That should have been a kill over onto the Kagura, the way that she was positioned, but she completely outplayed that with the help of the hard guard from Shieru. But that was so insane. We have to see that play again. You can see that damage coming through the Sky Piercer earlier on, and there it is, 9,999 damage. A double kill being brought in by the Kagura, but that was insane, and it looks like off camera, K is gonna fall to the damage of the Kagura once again. Sa now at a 7-3-4 KDA and on Flame Shot to boot.
Man, K tried to go for the steal there, a valiant attempt, knowing that there is a level equivalency between her and Kakureka. But unfortunately, against all the five, against the damage from the Pakira that allows her to really secure that Lord, it won't be enough. And off the back of an insane play from Sa, like you mentioned, Eterna, the jukes, the mind games there. You blink and you miss it, she just shows up in the back. And now with the Lord available, let's see how they play this out. They're managing the waves, possibly going for a 3-wave push.
That's what that's what great Kaguras can do, right? Catch you off guard, and at some point suddenly you're like, oh wait, what? How did I die? And it turns out it's because of the assassinations coming in from the Kagura. I mean, good Kagura players, they play it like assassins. Look, she's waiting in the bush right now, looking for that proper opportunity to go in for the Yin Yang overturn. Ku does spot her and will deny in that surprise element, but for the most part, that kill pressure is still definitely there.
Turns Rage onto Dinner, but that baits out the hard guard though. It's already used up, but the turret will not fall. Vietnam will rotate to the bottom side here to finally get one of the turrets they were looking for. They want to ideally get all of it. Like, look at Daisy just walking in the front, knowing that there is no way they commit onto her. But the whole team back up, healing. That will be, once again, a bit of a standoff, but Ku, does she smell a play? Walks into Kakureka though, takes a chunk of burst damage. Yin Yang overturn as well, it does not land. And now we're back to the waiting game. And Myanmar were able to actually hang on to that middle turret. But Sa, like you mentioned, it turned out the poking, the zoning, and also the vision control with the umbrellas is just lending itself to just so much information, so much utility for Vietnam.
Huge value, and now she's already picked up the Divine Glaive, so we were talking about her next item after the Holy Crystal and the Sky Piercer, and it turns out Divine Glaive was her next option. So even if Myanmar want to go for the itemization to kind of counter the burst magic damage coming from her, she already has the magic penetration to counter it back. So it definitely is going to lend itself as a big problem for Myanmar to kind of take away in these particular team fights, considering they haven't been able to take her down, especially after she's reached in that power spike, right? It looks like Ku is charging, gonna open up the map, but they have to understand that Luna Lynx, also with the Divine Glaive, by the way, has not found the exact same impact that Sa has been able to find on this Kagura.
She's been trying to match the penalty zone technically to try and serve as some utility for her team. But look at the maneuvers here. Kakureka already on the far side of the map. That there's a chance that Myanmar can take this opportunity to go for a fight. But they are the ones with the positional advantage. Daisy now burned low. Haling definitely looking for an advantage, looking for an opportunity. But with the hard guard available, it never is that simple.
It never is. Always a miscalculation. Every time you think it's a 1v1, she comes along and makes it a 2v1. And both of these teams are now going to be focusing onto the Lord. Kai at level 15, but so is... Oh, wait a second.
Kakureka just bursted down, immediately taken out. Penalty zone to try and follow up, try and save the fight. That'll be a kill picked up by Sa, but it won't be enough. That's a shutdown picked up by Halang as Daisy might be next. But no, they're backing away. They are aware of the hard guard, the healing potential. and that will be it. Myanmar take the 2 kills out of nowhere. What a misstep from Kaukureka there to just take the initial engage.
I was talking about the EXP gap between both of these junglers, but it doesn't even matter if one of the junglers aren't even present, right? 100 to 0% chance, just like that, as we take a look at the instant replay coming through. Initially, it was a great moment for them to capitalize over into the burst, but as soon as all their resources were taken out, that DPS from the Moskov did become a problem in that team fight for Myanmar to eventually capitalize over. And you can see he's actually itemized rather well, right? Instead of going for the Athena shield, Chikoshi went in for the Rose Gold Meteor instead to try and counter in that burst damage coming in from Sa. So there's layers of respect, but there's also layers of damage to the Moskov's kit at the moment.
Can't ignore the damage coming in from Dinner though. Definitely already on the Malefic Roar, able to shred down the frontliners. But with the Lord, that's the main problem here. Myanmar now making their move, going for the mid turret as the bottom wave is already pushing out. That will be the first turret secured for them, and this might spy a chance to go for Kaukureka. Penalty zone from Luna Lynx, followed up by K. That will be Kaukureka taken out already. Ku goes for a chance to go on Sa, but the unit overturns.
What?
The burst damage comes through. Ku barely surviving from there, but Dinner now sees a chance, going with the Blazing Duet, taking Luna Lynx down, but the Immortal is there. Ku coming in to try and save her teammate, but it won't be enough. Even with Helene with the last insanity, that won't be enough as Sa goes back and forth. The base completely neglected, but Vietnam winning out a fight there despite starting off losing their jungler.
How insane is this Kagura? I think we were questioning the Kagura pick a little bit because we don't see the Kagura pick quite often. We thought it was an experimental pick, but it must be a power pick with the way that Sa has been utilizing this Kagura. Right? Time and time again, able to find the proper setup, the proper initiation to pull in that yin yang overturn and combo it in with the damage, with the displacement, with the CC. And she is shredding through Myanmar right now. 10-4-4 KDA with the additional of that Winter Crown as well as the Blood Wings. So that's just it, right? She has a little bit more versatility in her kit with the defense coming through, with the shielding coming through from the Blood Wings. But she also has a Winter Crown to try and go for the outplays that she's been able to go for. But looks like Daisy's gonna be caught out.
Grace has revenge, but K does not make it over the wall. Penalty zone from Luna Lynx right here to try and seal the deal, but the hard guard comes through. Daisy trying to survive for her life, but Shieru will be the only one left right here. Daisy flickers out though, DPZ away, but the chase potential. The Ice Queen's one from Helene slowing everyone down, but she is but alone right here. Kaukureka waiting in the wings to try and deny, but there won't be any deaths taken up. As for Vietnam, they allow Dinner to push up on the other side of the map. 15 minutes until the Lord spawns.
That's something that both of these teams really need to start to prioritize, right? Sure, it's easy to kind of tunnel vision on these team fights, especially when you're in the middle of it or when it's forced onto you. But wave clear, housekeeping is going to be very important because technically for Vietnam, right, they have 2 lane pushers. They have 2 split pushers. They have the Paquito. They also have the Claude. And these 2 heroes will be very difficult to go against when they go in for the Lord Dance, which is exactly what both of these regions or both of these teams are going for right now as we're entering the 20th minute of the game. One of the longest games that I've casted so far, and it has to be between both of these because they do know the stakes, they do know the value, the risk that they're going for if they lose this game number 1 in this best of 3.
Both just playing it slow, waiting for one of them to make a blunder. For Myanmar, the fact that Ku is on the Kufra definitely is an advantage, but look at the wave on the bottom side. It's relatively equal, and it's meeting on the side of Myanmar. That usually means that the wave will eventually start pushing towards the side of Vietnam because the backup waves arrive first, as we're seeing right here. This could be a default push that Myanmar can use to try and force Vietnam to deal with it and go for a fight with a man advantage. For now, though, it's still going to be slow, waiting around, just looking for opportunities. And the Lord Dance, you have to remember, it's not as easily done as before. Tyrant's Rage, though, comes in, lands on Daisy, but that's a tanky Terizla with the body of Smith. They won't commit onto that immediately, and it's back to the waiting game.
Because I think Myanmar understand, right? Even if they want to go for a 50-50 on the Retribution, Kao has been doing so good on her retribution, right? There are so many times when she just comes in the last minute after the setup made by Myanmar and is able to out-retry the Baxi, out-retry Kai. So they're looking for opportunities as much as possible to go in for the kill, get a man advantage before they commit onto the Lord. But this is a scary, scary far lane. You can see Sa is there, anticipating the fact that Chikoshi will be clearing it out. And Burst versus DPS, but wait a second.
As Daisy jumped on penalty zone as well. That'll be the Terrorista taken out immediately. Sa is just too far to participate. Now without the main frontliner, Vietnam, you're gonna be forced to let go of this Lord unless Kao is looking for a chance to try and do something here. The Lord is doing a lot of damage, but Kao gets knocked out. Tyrant's Rage, Tyrant's Revenge. She's stunned. She's gonna be taken out, bursted down. The Immortal though will buy a bit more time, but the last Insanity. The Death of Jakao comes in, but the Hard Guard blazing duet combo. This is Vietnam's last-ditch effort, but it won't be enough. They're pushed back. As Sa will be the last one flying away. That'll be the HP bars from Myanmar, ever so low, but it won't be enough for Vietnam to make a difference. They might go for the Lord right here, but no, they want to try and play it safe. Even though the wave is pushing, they're gonna wait a bit longer to try and go for the Lord when they are at full force.
It was a valiant effort by Vietnam. They already lost Daisy, but they still want to go in for a risky, a 50-50 play, as it didn't really amount to much in the end. Despite Myanmar not going and capitalizing over the Lord straight away, they eventually do and are going to be able to blitz it in this 23rd minute.
Ooh.
But cool, that is very aggressive. You have the Lord. You might want to wait for it before you go in for the kill, because if they get taken out one by one before they go in for the siege, then it could render this Lord useless. They have to be careful with their setup.
Myanmar now just waiting for the Lord to push up. They don't really have the best of sieges technically, and they have to be careful. If they group around again for Sa to go for a big yin-yang overturn, that could be a big problem. But Delaying now, just burning everyone down, going for the slows. K just running straight for the crystal though. What is going on right there? Sa taken down, super low. Penalty zone from Luna Lynx will seal the deal though with no hard guard available. That'll be Myanmar immediately blitzing the crystal with no time at all.
GG, well played to Myanmar, as they are going to be leading this best of 3 series 1-0, and now they are at match point. One more game if they want to get as many points as they can in the standings of the group stage, if they want to make it to the playoffs. But that was a very back and forth game, Arashi. I mean, at some point I thought that Vietnam would have gotten it in the bag. It was so close. It was very far from what we've been seeing so far of stomps of one-sided games, but this was very close that it could have swayed either way.
I think for both teams, the fact that one team has great counter engage, the other has great engage, just allows for this very exciting dynamic, because you never know who's gonna come out on top. But I feel like in the end, Myanmar just had a lot better synergy, right? They were able to just stick together and have fights where they were ready for it. Whereas for Vietnam, it does seem like they got caught off guard a lot more often compared to Myanmar.
But even though Myanmar was able to win that game, Arashi, I'm pretty sure they might want to consider a respect ban for the Kagura, right? Because there were so many moments that the Kagura was one of the main reasons as to how they were able to turn these skirmishes, these team fights completely around, and even go for the initiation plays with the burst damage in her kit. So many times it causes miscalculations. This was actually one of the examples of it, right? Spear of Misery from the Moscow from down under onto the Kagura, but the hard guard came through, the burst damage was there, and they were able to turn it completely around. Here you were mentioning about the re-engage potential from Myanmar, and we do see that coming to light. They do get a little bit more in return, but that seems like to be the general flow of things that we've seen. I think one of the event turners, in my opinion, was that bait from Myanmar, right? Moskov baited the Kagura, baited Sa into the bottom lane as they were going for the Lord fight. I hope we get to see that later on. And that in turn allowed the Moskov with the global presence use the Spear of Misery towards the Lord, get Daisy down, and caused a huge miscalculation on their part. And they were able to get that Lord that eventually caused them to win the game.
I think what's really fascinating is the fact that usually we see the gold laners just become the main big decisive force right here. But for Vietnam, Sa was the one that made crazy outplays. here's, I believe, that one moment where they're just pushed all the way back, but Sa, out of nowhere, left the umbrella in the back, and Chikoshi was just not ready for it. And with the global play, the hard guard coming through for the backup, when the fight gets longer like this, Vietnam just finds ways for Sa to just keep resetting. And I think about 70-80% of the kills for Vietnam were in the hands of Sa. So technically, in a way, it seems like an equal game when it comes to kills, but Vietnam has all of that riding on one single person. And to be fair, Sa did very well with the advantages that she was able to get on the Kagura. I think overall it was just some select moments that got quite confusing. But this play right here from Sa, it just was so mind-blowing, man.
Oh, let's see it. Oh, beautiful. Yin Yang overturned versus
She
one
gets
man
out.
down, two members taken out. And again, right, you're right. She gets out. This is the moment that I was talking about, by the way, with Daisy being picked off. And then it looked like Vietnam wanted to go for a Hail Mary play. It looked like they might have gotten an advantage, but eventually they had to lose again another member. And they just were too far behind when it came down to the Lord's setup. So eventually, Myanmar, with 5 man available, with 5 man up, they were able to steamroll because technically at the 24th minute, right, all these members are at their power spike, all these members are at their peak, as we take a look at the post-game stats as well.
Oh man, look at that damage coming in from the Kagura, man. 100,000 out of nowhere. It's
That's
definitely
crazy.
nothing to sneeze at. Dinner on the Claw, though, I think it was quite difficult for her to really try and make some impact happen for her team because she keeps going in the right moment with the blazing duet. But for Myanmar, they have this very interesting way of dealing with it by just spreading out. It's almost like they just create a ring around Dinner, and Dinner seemed just a bit confused on which direction to really go for, and that kind of messed around with the targeting, especially because the main targets, the main damage dealers from the side of Myanmar are also mobile, man. The Abyss Walker from Chikoshi on the Moskov and Luna Lynx with the dashes on the Valentina can very easily just kite back away from it. So that is something that I think Vietnam will take into consideration for the next game.
So we're gonna crown our player of the game, or our MVP, for game number 1 from the side of Myanmar. Who do you think it's gonna be? We have Flying on the Xborg, but the MVP will be Kai. Alright, 3-2-12 KDA. You can also see her damage dealt. The fact that she was able to land in a lot of those retributions coming through was definitely a big reason as to how they were able to have a say in the later stage of the game and the later portions of the game. Her fast rotations on the Baxia also allowed her to help out those side lanes, give a little bit more pressure onto those side lanes to eventually utilize that to their advantage.
I think she was doing great, just being active, being mobile, the way the Baksha should be. And of course, the Turtle's Presence, the passive, definitely played a role in making sure that the roster of Vietnam are just a bit more manageable with all the healing coming in from the Angela. And who can forget that final sequence where Kay just immediately rolled past her team, past the Lord, and just jumped straight at the crystal. I mean, that took me completely by surprise, but hey, in the end, it kind of worked out, right? It pulled away all the attention from the rest of the team, from the Lord, and that's what the Baksha wants to do anyways, right? With this build, with the Winter Crown as well, I think that's another layer of mind games that Kay has shown to really understand.
Very sustainable, very, what do you call it when you can depend on? Very dependable. That's
Reliable.
the word, Arashi. Very dependable by Kai. I think one of the things that really stands out for me is the fact that nobody really stood out from the side of Myanmar, right? And it just goes to show how equal all of the members are and how synergized they are and how they focus so much on their particular roles that it wasn't like a Kagura crazy play, right? It's just Myanmar understanding the fundamentals. They were able to execute it properly. And then so it was kind of like a shared victory. But of course, that MVP was for Baxia, was for Kay.
I think I felt really bad for Chikoshi, I think, because I feel like the whole early game, the macro play, right, where she was before the neutral objectives, the utilization of the Spear of Destruction were also good. But towards the mid game, right, where the fights were so chaotic, you know that Sa just has her eyes on Chikoshi. And
Yeah.
again, the umbrella is just so subtle. And we haven't seen the Kagura in so long, right? Who can blame you for missing out on noticing the umbrella left behind? And at one point, she was 0-4, even though I felt like she had great contributions for her team and she was doing a lot of damage still, even though she had to be forced to itemize with some respect. Even though her battle spell technically was a bit more defensive, she was still a reliable source of DPS that her team relied on, especially to deal with the very tanky frontliners. Of course, having the X work to deal with the Terizla was just such a godsend, man. I feel like without the X work, the Terizla would have been a bit more difficult to pick off. But overall, again, for Chikoshi in particular, I feel like she did really well. It just doesn't look that way due to how the game kind of played out in the mid game.
Because like technically even long range gold laners find it very difficult to go against heroes like the Kagura, because like you mentioned, the umbrella is so subtle. But imagine a gold laner that has to kind of be very close to dish out the damage, because Moskov is a very close range hero, right? In order for him to deal in the basic attacks, in order for him to deal in with the damage from his skills, he needs to be quite close. So do you think they could capitalize over Malefic Gun to try and counter the Kagura?
Ooh, that's interesting. I feel like with the composition of Myanmar, right, they want to barrel through, they want to be aggressive, and they're the ones moving forward, right? You saw that when they're on the back foot, once they lost Chikoshi in that one fight, and they were just running away, and Sa, along with the hard guard on her, it was just chasing. It seems like Vietnam does a lot better when they're the aggressors. But when it comes to Myanmar, when they were on the back foot, it really isn't as reliable. So I feel like just going for more damage and making sure, just ensuring that your team are the ones moving forward, the ones that are the ones hunting instead of being hunted. I feel like that'll be a better play for the Moskov. But that Malefic Gun, we're yet to see a game-changing, meta-shifting game out of that item. And I'm quite curious as well, because there's a lot of potential there. It's not just the range addition. By all means, the stats from that item isn't really that bad either.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Have you seen it being picked up yet? Is there just no value in the Malefic Gun that these pro players are actually, seeing? Or they just don't have the time. They haven't had the time to experiment with it yet. Because I'm wondering how that works and how that it will affect, especially in lane, right? If you go 1v1 in the gold lane with the Malefic Gun, with how much range and poke that you have. I'm wondering whether or not like the dynamics that we usually know, like Carry versus Claude versus Moskov versus that dynamic can actually shift because of that item alone.
I mean, in theory, it's similar to how, let's see, like a Melissa, right, or a Hanabi can just be so safe and still do damage to you, right?
Yeah.
The Hanabi in particular is a name that popped up immediately when I was talking to several coaches about this. Immediately, they were like, okay, if there's any hero that can really benefit from this, like, in a game-changing way, it has to be something like the Hanabi that is so safe, that want to stay in the back for so far away from the danger. As a joke, I mentioned the Layla, because you're already hitting from so far away. Why not go even further? But maybe that'll be quite troublesome. Because
technically,
you're out
the
of
Malefic Gun. Technically, the Malefic Gun is Lila's gun. It was as if that item was designed for her. So it's not out of the question, Arashi. But yes, continue.
I just feel like that'll lead up to the I don't know, man. Like your opponents, the targets you're trying to basic attack, they might just be out of your frame. That might end up being like a very confusing way to play the gold lane. But who knows? We'll have to see. Maybe, I don't know, that is based on the Layla. I'm curious to see the carry actually, Eterna, you just mentioned earlier. I feel like the range is a big problem, right? One of the big weaknesses of the carry. So with additional range, that doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight into it in drafting phase for game number 2.
Game number 2, match point. So really so much pressure on Vietnam right now to try and turn this around and to force a game at number 3. And I'm wondering whether or not after that game, despite Myanmar being able to pick up that dub, they would want to go for Kagura ban or pick it up for themselves at some point. But so far, it looks like they're not going for that route, right? Yuzong, Novaria banned out. We do see that the Luo Yi and the Roger has been taken off by Vietnam. And it's also important to note that both of these teams have swapped sides. So now, Myanmar does have first pick. And I'm pretty sure Vietnam, understanding the value of the Angela, don't want to let it go. Unless they leave it open and they go in for the trade instead. But it looks like Valentina is going to be the choice of ban from Myanmar.
That's quite interesting, but for Vietnam, they ban away the Luo Yi, but the chip is still available. So earlier, I think we saw a trade, the chip for the Luo Yi. Now, Myanmar can kind of force this onto Vietnam, right? Do you want to ban the chip or do you want to ban the Angela? And if you look at the macro play at least, it does seem like in the early to mid game, Myanmar were the ones who were able to actually get the best out of the global presence that was from the Moscow in game 1. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see for Vietnam, what's the idea here? They know Myanmar can play for that macro. Which of these macro tools, the Moscow, the Angela, or the chip, do they want to deal with? Answer is neither. They go for the U. Oh, hang on a minute. Yesterday when we saw this, it ends up being a CC, by the way, when we saw this similar double U song showing up. But we'll have to see, man. First pick now for Myanmar.
That's just how OP the Yuzong is right now, ladies and gentlemen. You'd have to ban it twice. That's how impressive he is. I think that should have been an Angela ban, right? Because if it was left open, then Myanmar should have picked it up first. From game number 1, the Minotaur was banned in the first phase, and now that they opted to go for the Valentina ban, oh no, the Angela pops up here. And that's a Baxia Angela combo. That's a Anjaxia combo. That's crazy. Myanmar completely ignored both of those heroes.
I mean, call it the Bangela, right? Because it's like the Baxia Angela.
Anjaxia is better, guys.
I don't know, Bangela, because usually both these selections are banned out, I was thinking.
Okay.
But yeah, what's it? Anjaxia?
Anjaxia.
Sounds like a whole new hero for sure. But for Myanmar, going for the Minotaur and now the Fredrin, that's a lot of healing built up into this. They also banned away the Florin, by the way, in game 1, I believe. So, Natan, out of nowhere here, looking for a proper just team fight DPS solution. And with a Fredrin and Minotaur, it's going to be difficult to get your hands onto the Natan in the backline if the protection is on point.
That is actually very interesting because technically the Natan hasn't really popped up after the patch, right? With the way that the patch has kind of proven to us that the early game is as imperative as that, people usually vie away from heroes like the Natan who require a little bit more time to get to that power spike, right? Because for Natan, it takes, 4 items, you would say, to feel like he's gotten a say in these team fights. What does he go for? Starlium Scythe, Feather of Heaven. You would go maybe Holy Crystal, Blood Wings, I think is basic for a Natan. Meanwhile, most of the gold laners just require 3. So very interesting choice. We'll see if it works out. Because the Moskov worked out so well for them. Do you think that was a Moskov ban instead? The double Yuzong, the second Yuzong, is that a Moskov ban? Is that why they picked up the Natan and the carry?
I mean, it could be. I wouldn't be too surprised. It was quite problematic for the side of Vietnam to deal with the push, the DPS, and just the pure utility that comes with the Moskov as well. One of the few marksmen that can really go and stun someone up. But for Vietnam, they recognize the fact that they had a lot of tankiness, already a lot of survivability, but the X-Borg was just a big problem, so they banned that away, and they have a chance here to default back to the Terizla pick if they want to go for the same style, right? Outlast you, and now that they have a carry in the backline, they can be comboed with the Angela. There's a chance they can just go all the way forward. But remember, Eterna, we were talking about the Kagura respect. We haven't seen it so far, but it is 3 mid laners. So Myanmar definitely have a lot of respect for Sa here.
Yeah, you see the Faramis, you see the Valentina being banned out. You definitely, the next thing you think is definitely, okay, we have to pick up the Faramis. And Myanmar understand this. And they don't want to give even more layers of versatility in these team fights. And Of course, in addition to the Angela, to let them slide with another Faramis because, man, those brawls and those team fights are going to be very difficult. But it looks like that last ban coming through from Vietnam is actually the Lilia. So Lilia, Valentina, Novaria taken off the board. Here, Vietnam can still go for the Kagura once again if they want to, because it has been completely left open as Myanmar go for a Terizla ban instead. It kind of brings the question what Myanmar is thinking for their mid laner themselves, as well as that EXP lane with the Terizla taken out, because that was a great opportunity if they wanted to go for the contest, kind of force Vietnam to pick up the Kagura here. But what do you think?
I feel like for Myanmar, they can really benefit from a long distance mage. You can zone away all these short range heroes from the side of Vietnam. But the issue becomes the vulnerability, right? Having the Angela on the opposing team, if the Baxia just gets boosted with the hard guard, then if you're on a vulnerable mage, you're gonna get taken out very, very quickly. So that is the fine balance they have to think of. I might be biased, but I like my Yves. But for Vietnam, with the Arlet now, they're really doubling down, going for that aggression. And as a response, Myanmar bring out the Benedetta here. I thought they're gonna go for more tankiness, but I guess with the Fredrin and Minotaur already available, both tanky and both having the healing, having someone that can play that macro game, someone that can dive in that backline or even zone everyone away with the Electro Final Blow will be beneficial. But I called it, Eterna. Jeeve on the map.
It's Arashi's favorite hero, by the way, guys. That's why he's so hyped. You know, if they want to do this for Vietnam, you know, moving on from the Eve pick just for a bit, Arlot Roam.
Arlot mid.
Yeah, Arlot Roam, and they can't because they don't have magic damage. Because, you know, I was thinking like against the Benedetta, I'd love to see the Paquito Benedetta clash once again, right? The Paquito does so well against the Benedetta, but looking at the composition, I think they're severely lacking on that magic damage unless they want to commit towards the mid game, right? Because we've seen teams kind of just push the Angela into the mid lane and go for a fighter heavy composition, but they're gonna go for the standard Kagura once again. It was too much value in game number 1, and that's gonna close out both of these teams' drafts. But Arashi, back to that Yves pick. What do you think about this? Because technically the Yves has been buffed, right? Her first skill, base damage, has been increased, so it will help with her clear speed that she lacked against some of these mid laners.
It's the base damage, but also the scaling damage. How much more that skill does with items factored in. And now, particularly after the changes, I think a lot of people, for those of you who haven't like thought about this, the glowing one was one of the core items for the Yves. So now, with that item being so much more overloaded with effects, it's a great choice, especially against a Angela, against an Arlet, right? Against a Baxia. That's gonna be a value pickup for this Yves. And she does well in the pushes. She does well zoning away the carry potentially. And even against a Kagura, you technically have a bit more survivability. Because even if you get caught off guard with a big yin-yang overturn, you can pop the reward manipulation for a bit of shielding, right? And even if you're chased down by the Baxia, you have the movement speed boost from the Void Blast that allows you to just kite back away as well. It's a bit of a complete package in the Yves, which is why I really enjoy playing her so much. I'm not quite convinced about the battle spell though. I personally always go for the sprint just because I like to keep my distance, right? Just snipe away without being in danger myself. But considering the circumstances, there could be a lot of different potential battle spells here that can be used for the side of Myanmar.
So we'll see, ladies and gentlemen, as we get into game number 2 and into the Land of Dawn for both of these regions. Myanmar now at match point. They're one game away of winning it 2-0 and to move forward perhaps into the playoffs. We'll see how this pans out in game number 2. But Arashi, you posed in the question for the Yves. We do see the Yves opted to go for Flicker here instead of the Sprint.
So with a Flicker, it allows you more outplay potential, more ways to get out of dangerous situations, and you can Flicker while using the real world manipulation as well. So that is something that you gain going with this Flicker. That clear though, you're talking about Eterna, you can see it being very apparent. Even though the Kagura can spam out some spells, the Yves is just so good. because of the spammability, right? It's not one spell, it's multiple in a short frame. Shieru, though, will come in to try and help out in that department. And with the Baxia Fredrin matchup, we haven't seen this in quite a while. It's going to be a standard clearing match, technically. With the concussive blast in the hands of K, though, they're going to be attempting to just match up in when it comes to farm. But Helene going down under the turret of Vietnam there, definitely aggressive thoughts in her head.
For sure. And like you mentioned, right, with both of these teams kind of vying towards the neutral objectives, it's actually going to be interesting to see both of them go head to head in that retribution battle as well. Because for the most part, in game number 1, we saw that Kao Kyut Ka actually had way better retributions, right? A lot more accurate when it came down to the neutral objective takes. So we'll see if that actually plays into this, especially, I mean, technically with the Fredrin, with that additional damage from your ult, you can actually kind of cross that with the damage from the retribution to steal and take away the turtles away. So now with Kao on the Baxia, I'm wondering or not that will kind of even the playing field a little bit better, but so far that turtle is half health.
And it seems like Myanmar, the ones with control here. Cool on the Minotaur, not level 4 though, but here he comes. Minion Fury popped up. Kalkurika flicker too as well, by the way. Shieru also taken out. Sa comes in, takes out Helene, but at what cost, man? The reward manipulation is popped up by Luna Lynx, but it won't amount to anything. That will be a decisive take for Myanmar off the back of a great Minion Fury. But look at Sa. Hardguard will be able to save her, but look at his outplay attempt going in 2v3 as Kalkurika rolls in to try and back up her team. K now being in the front, but it does not seem like Vietnam can try and catch up with Myanmar to get any trades for that turtle take.
That was a 1-for-1 trade, a 2-for-1 if you include the turtle in favor of Myanmar. But again, right, Sa on her signature pick, so aggressive. And this time, she's not opted for the flame shot, Arashi. She's actually opted to go for the flicker instead. So expect that she can have a little bit more room and a little bit more flexibility to go in for these crazy fights. And she goes 1v1 against a Benedetta.
Going for the yin yang overturn outplay right there, but Sa does not get it. Helene will be able to escape with her life as Ku zones Sa away. But look at how persistent she is though. She hasn't been recalling when she's this low on HP. With the flicker available, there are more ways to be unpredictable in these fights. Look at the bottom side. Shieru now. Oh, entropy pop by Chikoshi aggressively, but there's no follow-up. There's no catch tools available. That is the weakness of going for a Minotaur as Myanmar make a play for this bottom side turret.
Yeah, technically the Minotaur didn't have flicker yet, right? So even if they wanted to go for the Minion's Fury, it was a little bit more difficult to combo it in with the short range that the Minion Fury had. But it was enough to zone the members of Vietnam away in that bottom side to go in for the gold shield as well as the turret. So this is a heavy Chikoshi on the Natan. Should be able to get to that power spike a lot quicker with how much gold she was able to get from that gold shield. Now, Kai, as well as the rest of the members from Vietnam, are going to be centering around the next neutral objective. This turtle has already spawned. Sa is there, though. Going to be opening up the map, giving information and vision as both of these teams go for the setup.
It's a very dangerous situation, but Luna Lynx already with the glowing wand. She went for the demon boots, the mana boots, instead of going for something like Enchantment Talisman later on. But Sa, with the aggressive plays right here, with a Kagura in the bush, that just makes so many areas around the map just inaccessible due to it turning into a danger zone. But for Myanmar, they have the Minotaur. They're confident that they can go for a 50-50 right here. They're trying to burst it down. Real manipulation, the final slash from Daisy, though, sets everything up. But the big Minion Fury and the knockup is not going to be enough, though. Myanmar falling down one by one as Luna Lynx will be the next one. As Helene runs for the turret, immobilized, though. She will get taken out as well. Almost a full-on wipeout for Vietnam.
That was 4 members taken out for the price of none, and it looks like they're looking for that 5th member, Chikoshi, in a tough position, but he's actually able to shut down the Kagura here, Arashi. And that's a big win for, of course, Chikoshi herself. As we take a look at that replay, that Minion's Fury came into clutch, right? As you can see here. But unfortunately, the timing was a little bit off. And so the Baxia was still able to get down in that retribution and take the neutral objective. And that was one of the biggest questions that I had in this 50-50 battles between both of these teams. Who will be able to have the better chance of winning out that retribution battle, and it looks like Kao has been able to kind of neutralize it, a 1-to-1 in terms of that turtle take. Stardom Scythe though built in by Chikoshi, as looks like a gank is coming through.
Just running forwards aggressively. Going with the Curse Helmet rush though, more damage essentially around her. Shieru now with the Flash of the Oasis will unable to team, but look at that. Oh, top and bottom, Halang almost gets taken out by Daisy. But without a turret available now, Myanmar, they're still having an advantage when it comes to control, but they gotta be careful, man. Vietnam, as in game number 1, have a lot of burst damage potential that they need to respect unless they want to get caught off guard and lose members before the big fight.
For sure. And it looks like, again, right, Myanmar looking for the next objective to take. How are they going to capitalize over this? Dinner is caught in a bad situation.
Oh, but K is the one just pounded on. There's going to be a knock-up coming in, but the yin-yang overturn is just too much damage. It's a double for Sa, and now Myanmar are on the run. Chikoshi able to just kite back, juke around with the entropy, but Luna Lynx is going to be falling victim to Dinner. It's only a matter of time, but Sa even picks up that kill in the end. Halang trying to juke around, trying to buy some time. But it's Vietnam clearing the map once more, taking 4 members and then going straight for the neutral objective. They are taking over, man.
They are completely taking over, right? A 4K gold lead now in the 7th minute of the game. And they're even going for the invasion into the jungle from Myanmar. They're completely taking away all these resources from Myanmar to capitalize over, and even Dinner gonna be able to get another turret in the top side. It doesn't look like Myanmar is having as much of a good time as they were able to in game number 1, but look at that Yin Yang overturn.
Gets cancelled somewhat, but it's still, that's gonna be the Sky Piercer, I think. Just executing coup there. Tried her best, but that's why the Minotaur can't really face check bushes, especially when you're not building for tankiness and you rush that Flask of the Oasis. Kay needs to be the one to do that, as Halang tries her best to be a nuisance right here, just flanking around, dashing around, but it won't be enough, man. She is losing out in impact compared to Daisy on the Arlet, who relatively has been just content to just stay in the lane and exert that pressure, waiting for a big fight.
0-3-2. That's what Lang is at the moment. And it hasn't been a great game for her. It's been very difficult for her. And again, right, from game number 2, don't you think this warrants a Kagura ban up until this point? 7-1-3 KDA only taken down once by Chikoshi, I think earlier on. But even then, she still has been steamrolling now with the Divine Glaive to top it all up and to make things even worse. Myanmar, they... Oh no. No!
Boom! That's gonna be Halang deleted immediately. That is the Kagura damage. Now with a man advantage, Kao Kudaka walks up aggressively, unfazed, undeterred, walking straight towards the purple buff, going in, connecting onto Chikoshi, but with the entropy she'll be able to kite back away. Everyone's grouping up together here, but Inu and Fury gets channeled down. Kao Kudaka will be the only one that's hit by it though. And Vietnam, with a calculated approach, now still with the man advantage, they can go for the Lord, but they're prepping for the macro play. They're sending Shieru to the top side.
All Myanmar need to do right now is try and buy some time, but they've been playing so forward, so aggressively as, again, right? Hilang will actually Hilang soon because of that yin-yang overturn if she keeps playing as aggressive as she currently is, because Chikoshi is nowhere near ready to go in for these team fights. The Natan is not near his power spike yet, has not reached that power spike yet, but they're still forcing the fights. They're still forcing these engages over to Vietnam, and they have been able to capitalize over and over and over again. This is a 6K gold lead now for Vietnam, Arashi.
But keep your eyes open for the kite back situation, because with the Ice Queen's 1 completed for Luna Lynx, there's a chance that Myanmar can really leave Vietnam out behind when they're going for these big fights. With the Minotaur as well, there's a lot of ways for them to go backwards, to go defensively. But Chikoshi going with the entropy, trying to trade the life for the turret, but unfortunately the hard guard, as always, comes in clutch from Shieru. That'll be Dinner picking up the turret for just a Purify. And that's still them holding the control. Even though Dinner is low, there is no way for Myanmar to burst this Lord down fast enough. So Vietnam are content just waiting around right here, waiting for Sa to eventually find a big play. Yin-Yang overturn onto Crew, but it just gets attempted to be cancelled at least. Electro Final Blow is being used to try and zone out, but Sa getting close, getting low, getting picked up. And that'll be Myanmar striking back. That's the AoE coming down with the real-world manipulation as Daisy goes in the back, securing the kill onto Ku, but that's only the roamer. Myanmar striking back when Vietnam is just unprepared for the collision.
Here we are in the 11th minute, and like you mentioned, Arashi, they are striking back, and they are striking back with full force. Despite them having a little bit more of an opportunity when it does get forced into game number 3, they don't want to take that risk, they don't want to take that chance, and they're looking for this comeback in the 11th minute of the game. Unfortunately, they do not go for the neutral objective take, they do not focus onto the Lord, seeing as they are a man down. They want to play this as decisively as well as disciplined as possible. It looks like they are going to be opening up the map there, giving a little bit of vision for themselves to figure out where the members of Vietnam currently are. If they want to go for a 50-50 in the neutral objective take, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, right now, Kao is 2 levels ahead of Kai at the moment, so they need to kind of play a different way. And looks like Hyang is looking for that.
Ooh, Luna Link's taken very, very low, but she's able to survive, but maybe not for long. Daisy, though, gets pushed back. Myanmar successfully is defending their mid laner, but the fight isn't over yet, though both teams still moving up aggressively. But that will be Luna Links forced to back away in Vietnam. Now, again, back in control, but watch on the top side where the Angela is just 1v1 against the Benedetta. That is some place where Vietnam can maybe, or Myanmar can maybe go for a play.
Osa!
But once again goes for the deletion onto Chikoshi, and they're going for it once more. Ku, so low, unable to escape, cut off from the base, but she gets ignored. They're moving forward to try and go for K, to try and secure the jungler, and now setting their focus on Helene. Not really able to kite back out, but the final blow will allow her to slide out of that difficult situation. One member down though, without the gold laner, Vietnam confidently go for the Lord.
Yeah, they're gonna blitz it, they're gonna take it. DHS already built in for dinner, and this is a Warcry carry, by the way, the emblem choice that she has opted to go for. But that was a beautiful play by Sa again, right? The fact that she was able to annihilate Chikoshi in the back line right before a very important team fight was just so imperative to the success that Vietnam has been able to amount for themselves, as this Lord is going to be marching down in the bottom lane. Right now, this carry is sitting on 3 items, already ready for this particular team fight. The only thing that will be a problem is the range, right? That's what the Yve has to offer. She has 3 items already with the Enchanted Talisman, the Ice Queen one, and the Glowing one. So they do have to be careful with the range, and Dinner still does need to respect that magic damage. And here it is, that magic damage.
The real manipulation being used early on though. Myanmar trying their best to really melt down this Lord. It will collide for now, but Vietnam, they're trying to get extra value here. Jumping onto K, final slash, lands on the 2, but the counter engage with the Minion Fury doesn't really work well enough. It's used defensively actually. Delaying, shut it down. That's gonna be the true damage coming through. Vietnam take away that base turret and they get K for their troubles, but they lost Sa with that aggressive style. Luna Link's now trying to chase down, slowing down the members of Vietnam, but Daisy is trying to go back with the final slash, still even escaping with the vengeance though. Very well played, kiting out of danger, and that will be it. But look at the top side, Myanmar, they will be able to clear that wave though, so almost a base turret taken out technically, but Myanmar with a great defense.
We have to take a look at this replay, right, Arashi? Because that Yin Yang overturn into the backline did eliminate K. It should have taken Chikoshi as well, but the Purify was there, and she was able to get out of that situation and deny that damage from coming through. But that was a very close call, but unfortunately, they weren't able to take Chikoshi out. And the fact was, right before that particular siege that Vietnam went through, she already picked up that Holy Crystal, so to shred the damage, that base damage from the Holy Crystal was definitely evident in that team fight that allowed Myanmar to quickly burst through, one, the Lord, as well as the super minions that came with the Lord. And now it looks like Myanmar are looking for an opposite siege, an opposite strategy, and with the Benedetta constantly clearing out in those side lanes, it is still going to be a problem for Vietnam in these upcoming Turtle or Lord rather dances.
Unless if you say Angela, but now Daisy face checking into a brush, taking a lot of damage. Immortality is available. Final slash defensively. Hard cut is really used onto her though, but she will be able to survive. But that's a massive minion fury combo with a real world manipulation. But Chokoshi moves forward undeterred. Double kill, triple kill for her troubles as K runs for Kalkute. You might want to get out of there immediately, man. Lord has just spawned up and Myanmar picked the perfect time to just pull the trigger on that fight. They're going to go straight for it. But Luna Ling still chasing down here. They're trying to zone the members of Vietnam while still going for the Lord.
They have every opportunity to do that, right? With the space that they have, with 2 members taken out. You could even say that Sai is one of their main damage dealers up until this point. And now it looks like Myanmar is looking for that second win as we are in match point.
But the Waves pushing on the top side as well. They go for the mid turret first. Easy job done, but with the members of Vietnam spawning on right here, the top side might be a bit more tricky. Luna Lynx definitely wants to be a bit more careful there, lest she gets hit by a huge yin-yang overturn. But that's before the Lord is even in the picture, by the way. Now, lumbering through the mid lane, there's a chance for Myanmar to set this up so that Vietnam has to deal with the Lord in the mid lane while they push on the top side.
They need to take Chikoshi down. Already with the Divine Glaive as well to boot, and it looks like this might be the end of Vietnam if they can't successfully go for the defense.
Kalkudika is trying to zone, but K gets Daisy knocked up though. The real manipulation onto the top side actually with the minion fury again. A massive combo. Daisy tries her best to dive in the back, but at this point Chikoshi just way too much damage. Sao makes the play though, but the yin-yang overturn will not be enough. The Lord is still active, is still doing damage, but Chikoshi melts everyone down, including the crystal. That will be Myanmar with a sweep.
We are to be respected, we are to be feared and revered. My oh my, Myanmar with a clutch comeback. That looked like it was Vietnam's game. That looked like Vietnam should have been able to close it and should have been able to force a game number 3 from Myanmar. But once again, Myanmar being able to have a very brilliant showing into the later stage of the game. They were very patient. They were waiting for Natan to hit her power spike, and she eventually got that, and that really was the beginning of the end for Vietnam. And if we take a look at the standings, right, Myanmar and Vietnam earlier on were tied into 3-3. This should actually put Myanmar higher, I think an additional 3 points, 6 points, tied in with Philippines and Malaysia. But we're gonna go in for a refresh to see all the results of the offline matches that aren't being streamed to see what's going on. But here it is. Okay, Philippines now at 9 points, and so Malaysia and Myanmar are both tied at 6.
Like you mentioned, Eterna, it's very important that they get like a proper on sweep. But before we get more into that, let's take a look at the highlights, man, because that game, Vietnam, props to them as well, because even though they didn't come out on top, this game was intense and there were a ton of great moments right here, all the way from the beginning. Of course, there's the big combos coming in from Myanmar. We're already expecting that. But the fact that Vietnam were able to find moments of success right here, despite the fact that on paper, they don't really win out in a proper big team fight. Sa was able to find big moments, and so did Daisy. And the utilization of the hard guard for Vietnam is definitely something that was a major problem for Myanmar.
Lang was also not doing a great job in her lane, right? She was constantly shut down. I think Daisy time and time again was able to find really great plays across the board in these team fights and in these skirmishes, and it felt like the composition that Myanmar brought was strong, but it severely lacked in mobility, which is something that Vietnam had. So they were able to rotate a lot quicker. You can see here as well, Chikoshi wasn't ready in terms of her items. She hadn't reached her power spike just yet. So her damage output in these team fights were really lackluster, and it was very difficult for them to take these team fights with the lack of damage coming through.
And man, that yin-yang overturn, I think a lot of teams will be taking notice. If it's not meta, it's at least a relevant factor here. That is a lot of burst damage, and not to mention good utility and vision gathering with the umbrellas. Despite the fact that Myanmar had spammable abilities of their own, Vietnam were able to find great pickoffs. But when it comes to a proper on fight, especially once Chikoshi has the power spikes, it's just too much damage, man. And it's from such a farther range compared to Dinner. Dinner was just zoned away so much by all the AoE card control tools that she can't really walk up and be that decisive damage source that her team needs her to be.
That's why the Yve was such a good pick, right? One of the biggest counters towards heroes like the carry that has dominated the meta for quite some time before the latest patch hit are these long-range heroes, right? The Farsa, the Yves, and it really showed in this game, especially with Luna Links, right? Picking up another pick there, another item for a little bit more damage as well as, you know, versatility in these team fights. It was very difficult. We did see that Sa tried to go for the assassinations onto Chikoshi. There were very valiant efforts to do so, but at the end of the day, the spacing from Chikoshi, the way that she kind of anticipated those yin yang overturns up until that final moment, here we'll see it come to play, was just incredible as well from Chikoshi. A big round of applause to this team.
And look at Sa, that despite Myanmar just playing it well, she still finds a chance to land that yin yang overturn on Chikoshi and on Luna Links at the same time, right? So that's testament again to the skill of these players from Vietnam. They're definitely a real threat to be reckoned with. But let's take a look at the post-game stats right here. And almost 100k once more for Sa on Kagura, man. You gotta respect the potential there for sure. But this time, Chikoshi a lot closer there when it comes to damage output, because late game Natan, man, we haven't seen it really work out as well in recent times, but it's still definitely a big factor.
So if Vietnam won, we would definitely crown that MVP for Sa, right? And the question is, who will be crowned the player of the game or the MVP from the side of Myanmar? We are going to take a look right now. Who will it be? Natan, Chikoshi was dealing a lot of damage as well. Do you have any predictions, Arashi, as to the MVP?
I think it has to be Chikoshi, man, because the way she played right here, I think it's a lot cleaner than in the previous game. I think she got used and adapted to the Kagura a lot faster than I would expect. So I think that is my prediction.
Okay, we'll see. Drumroll, please. And it is Chikoshi. KDA 920. Despite being on a late game hero like the Natan, who needs a little bit more time to scale to the later parts, and the fact that there was so much dive, mobility, and kill pressure from Vietnam, she was only taken down twice. Her entire damage dealt, 80k, is actually quite impressive because the amount of time, the duration after she hit her power spike as to how fast they were able to close afterwards was actually quite small. It was a small window of opportunity.
It's just the value of having a Purify. And by all means, the player of the match is Chikoshi, but the rest of the team really played a big role. I mean, we saw, I think, Ku earlier with the Minion Fury. I thought it was going to be used with a flicker forwards, but it's a flicker backwards, right? The team recognizes that Chikoshi is farming up, that the Chikoshi can deal that damage if she gets the appropriate protection. So with the whole team effort, that's what allows her to walk up a lot more aggressively and do some damage. And of course, the timings for the Purify, the timings for the Entropy is just on point. And it's not even just that defensive maneuver. It's also the moments where she was bold enough to go for a aggressive forwards entropy in this game. And I think that's the hallmark of a Natan that really knows his limits, right? Well, in this case, her limits. But when you can use your defensive tool, your only defensive tool, and use it aggressively, that is definitely something that is something that shows her skill.
So again, right, with this win coming in from Myanmar, this should propel them further up into the standings. And I'm like taking a look at, okay, if you guys are having a little bit of, you know, FOMO, fear of missing out, you guys can actually check the standings in the official website IESF.gg. You guys can go ahead and check out the Southeast Asia region and take a look at the results and standings for Group 1 or Group A. And you guys will see Myanmar, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand in this particular group. There's a total of 9 regions that are fighting for that top 4 position to eventually make it to playoffs. And we'll see, wait. Ongoing and upcoming, Vietnam and Myanmar. We saw that Myanmar was able to take it 2-0 earlier on. We're going to have a match between Vietnam and Philippines. That will also be a big clue as to who makes it, but our final match, I don't know if this is going to be offline or we're going to actually be able to cast over it, but there's going to be also, oh no, we're not, because it happens on the same time. They're both at 6 p.m. So Myanmar versus Malaysia, Arashi. And again, right, Malaysia and Myanmar should be tied at 6 points.
Okay, well, unfortunately, there's some things we won't be able to bring out and show to you guys. But what we can bring in is an interview, Eterna.
Oh, okay. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk to the victors. Ring, ring, ring. Are you there? Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Lunaling. How are you? Hang on, let me
I'm
just
good.
adjust my audio real quick. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Congratulations, by the way, for that 2-0. It was super clean. It was super decisive. How do you feel about your team's performance so far?
How to say about it? Yeah, I really trust my teammate. I think that's why we can win. Maybe early in the early game we are really losing and we different go like a 5K. But I trust my teammate. They really can play well. So that's why I think we win the game.
That was great, right?
Wow.
Because in game number 2, Arashi, it was so close, right? You came back with a comeback, right? Vietnam nearly closed it out, but your patience, your persistence, and of course your, dedication towards this game, your perseverance and resilience just allowed you to win it out 2-0. Arashi, do you have a question?
Well, I think there's a big question from all of us here who were watching that game. How surprised were you that the Kagura showed up? Not once, but even twice there. Because that final pick Kagura for game 2, even we were like, whoa, again? Considering this composition. Are you surprised that you know about this Kagura? Did you feel like, okay, in game 1 it's good, but we can deal with it. It doesn't matter. We don't have to ban it away in game 2.
So we're not really surprised about she picked the Kakura because mostly we are suffering with them together. So sometimes how I play, she is the really best mid laner, so she can play really good play. And
Whoa.
the last actual day ago, she played Kakura also. Like she's so crazy. So in the second game, we thinking like, should we ban Kakura? Like that. But like, just give her like she will play Kakura again like that. Yes.
What
Alright,
what
so
was
you-
the decision behind not banning it in the second game?
We're just thinking like talking to my Golay or talking to my is Kakura using the skill one to you just run it, okay? Like that. We just trying to run, yeah, like trying to escape them, yeah.
I see. Okay.
All right. Well, along with that, by the way, what was the thought process of going for that Yeve in game number 2? Because I was thinking like it really works well right there for that composition. Did you think that it's a great pick, or is it something like a power pick that you have in your arsenal?
I mean, you mean about the Eve?
Yes, the Yeve.
Yeah.
Now I think Yves is a little buff in the game, and then Yves game is like a slow to the enemy. So there is a Bahasha, there is a Arlo. Every time they get it the slow effect, they really cannot do the performance. So I just trying to poking, and maybe my Golem will be carry because she have a best damage. So I wanna play like a slow mage and poking. Yeah. So they
Alright, I
really
mean, that's a great
Ah.
call.
Yeah.
Very
So it
good.
was
I mean,
the
so you can
utility,
calculation.
right? That kind of, eventually made you decide to go for the Eve in game number 2. So very interesting. Okay, I have another question, right?
Yeah.
In your group so far, who do you think has been your main contender? Like, who has been the most difficult region to go against so far?
And our difficult region to Versa, right? So I think it's a
Yeah.
Philippines. Philippines is the really
Oh.
hard game enemy. That the other country is, I think, just the same level, and we are really same. I feel like that way. Just Philippines,
Right.
Philippines so strong. Yeah,
Philippines so strong. I mean, they are leading in the group, right? With 9 points
yeah.
at the moment.
We met with Omega yesterday. We already lost like 0-2. They are so strong. Yeah.
How about how confident are you to make it out of the groups? And how confident are you to make it to the playoffs?
And now we have to versus Malaysia again. If we can win the Malaysia, we will go to the playoff for tomorrow. So I think we are already ready for that also. We want to versus Malaysia also. Yeah.
That's great. Arashi, do you have a last question?
Well, it's a customary question I always ask during an interview, but do you have any statements right here for your supporters, for all the people in Myanmar that's definitely supporting your run right here, just rooting for you to really be champions?
Champion. We just trying our best. just like that. Maybe we will show our performance on best also. Yeah, just like that.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's
Alright.
great. Thank you so much for this interview. Again, congratulations and good luck for your next matches. We hope to see you in the playoffs once again. Thank you so much, Luna Lin.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Huh. Arashi, when you asked about the champion thing, it didn't seem like she was confident to get it. Did you get the same familiar as the same kind of idea? Cuz man,
You felt like she wasn't confident in going for it, you mean? Or
yeah. She was like champion?
well, it's great to be humble, right? But I think I would prefer a bit more flair, right? Of course, people know we are from the Indonesian region, and this is that spicy region, man. Of course, we lose out to Malaysia. That's something we're working on. Be patient.
Oh god.
But
I
man,
thought we don't talk about that.
I'm just saying they have us beat when it comes to that spice, man. But we prefer
Yeah.
that as much as possible. So hey, they're going with the humble route. That's definitely a way that some teams have been able to use. So we'll have to see their performance. They sure seemed confident, at least going into their next matches. They showed again that they have great understanding about the game, about the composition. Right? We were asking about the Yves, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't have to do damage. Right? I can trust in my teammates. The trust factor as well. But I can just
Yeah.
trust in my teammates to do what they need to do." And all I have to do is just spam all these skills, man. Just slow people down. I mean, I like how everything was calculated, and it's not just like, oh, I like playing Eve, so I picked it.
Yeah, their next match is going to be with Malaysia. Again, right? I think she mentioned it in the interview as well. So there are a few matches that we still need to get through. But our next match of the day, the ones that we are going to be casting over, will be Vietnam again versus the Philippines. And even Luna herself mentioned, like, Philippines is one of the top contenders to be able to make it to the playoffs and top contenders to make it to WEC and Riyadh. So after that loss, let's hope that Vietnam can recollect themselves and, come into this match with the best of spirits. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go on a short break. Me and Arashi will be back after the break. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere for ISF MLBB Women's Asian Regional Qualifiers. There you go. Bye-bye.